Welcome to my second live book reading. My name is Beth Shepherd, and I'm the author of Ernie Gonzalez, The Determined Dreamer, and Ernie Gonzalez, Escape from Paradise. And as I mentioned in the first book reading, I'm just working on the third book, which I'm hoping will be called Ernie Gonzalez, Revenge of the Thug Slugs. So you can find out about the Thug Slugs in this book. So today I'm going to be reading my second chapter from my first book. So I'm so glad that you could join me, and welcome if it's your first time. If you want to catch up on the first book reading, you can do so. You should be able to find it on my YouTube channel. And there's my first book reading, the first chapter, and I give a story writing tip and I set an activity for you. So first of all, I just want to say hi to Amir, who I know is watching today. So hi, Amir. And also to Jinhan and Rohan. I believe you're watching, so that's great. And I look forward to seeing you all with our tutoring lessons this week. So that's good. So I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying in and finding things to do, staying at home. So well done to you for staying in. It's not easy. So I have some things to share from last week. So thank you for everyone who sent in their what happens next in the first chapter of Ernie Gonzalez. So I just want to share one with you. It's from a girl called Amaya. So and I think she's watching today. So hi, Amaya. So her suggestion of what happens next is that people screamed when they saw Ernie. A girl then picked him up and placed him on a wooden table and left him there. Well done, interesting. And she's left a lot of room for more what happens next in the story. So well done. And I particularly liked hers because of the awesome description. So she added in a beautiful simile. So I'm just going to read that to you. So she put, feeling nervous and confused, his polished glasses were dripping down like dead flowers. Very clever. So hopefully you all know how to write similes and enjoy doing them. So maybe you could add them in some of your writing. So let's crack on with what happens next in Ernie Gonzalez, The Determined Dreamer. So I'm going to read to you this chapter, Dreams of Olive Garden. Okay, so just a quick recap. In the first chapter that I read last week, the book started with Ernie splat inside a rotten, soggy avocado. Anyone like avocados? Yeah, I love avocados. Green and mushy. Ernie loves avocados. So he had fallen splat into rotten, soggy avocado, and he had decided that his dream was well and truly over. So in this chapter, I explained a little bit how he got into a rotten, soggy avocado. If you remember, the story said that he got into a box of vegetables and was nearly squashed between two beetroots. Poor Ernie. Actually, I'm just wondering, has anyone ever squashed a snail in the rain? It's not very nice, is it? So, thankfully that didn't happen to Ernie. Otherwise, it would have been a very short book. So Ernie wakes up inside a box of vegetables, and suddenly a door opens and there is a hand coming straight towards him. And then the chapter ends there, leaving you guessing what's going to happen next. So thanks to Amaya, she's given us one idea of what could happen next. Okay, next chapter. So Dreams of Olive Garden. When Ernie came round, he discovered that he was in what seemed to be a ready-made snail home on the windowsill in someone's kitchen. Kind of a bit similar to Amaya's what happens next suggestion, so well done. A whole week had passed since that dreadful day, and Ernie was feeling very scared and alone. As he sat next to the window, he began to go over the events of last Thursday, trying once again to make sense of it all. The day had started like any other, with the smell of his mama's cooking filling the house. Ernie awoke unusually early and lay in his bed. And as he lay in his bed, he noticed that there was a strange stirring in his heart. It was something that he had not felt before. He had a strong feeling that it was time to set off on a journey to reach his dreams. The Olive Garden. Eagerly, he jumped out of bed, stretched his tentacles, and took a long yawn. Then he pulled out a box from his cupboard that was labelled "Stuff for My Adventure" in big, bold letters. Show you the box? Must have been a very small box, hey, for a snail. Inside it, he had packed everything that he needed for his daring journey, including a large sketch pad with a series of drawings and maps entitled "My Cunning Plan." There was also a lot of random stuff that he had no idea whether he would need. A large blob of pink chewing gum, a small yo-yo, and a small mint with a hole in the middle. And lastly, a cotton bud. Strange items. I wonder why he thought he needed those. Feeling satisfied with his chosen items, he confidently threw all the contents of the dusty box into his rucksack. For as long as he could remember, Ernie had been dreaming of finding this elusive olive garden. It was said to be snail paradise. As a small snail, he was raised on stories of this wonderful place. He would sit for hours listening to his grandfather, Manuel, or Papa, as Ernie fondly called him, tell him about row after row of lush green cabbages, shaded by beautiful olive trees, with endless, delicious, succulent olives lining the floor for snails to feast upon. There was said to be a pool at the end of the garden, which was the most luxurious pool any snail had ever set eyes upon. Surrounding the beautiful warm pool were sweet-smelling lemon trees, and every afternoon a gentle breeze blew a few leaves down from the trees into the water. Ernie would imagine jumping onto a leaf and sailing across the pool to Lemon Harbor, the wind blowing through his tentacles, and spending the evening relaxing and sipping honey nectar. Ernie was dazzled by his papa's stories. Night after night, he would beg him to tell them all over again. So let's have a look. It's Ernie and his grandpa. So I'm wondering if any of you have a dream, a bit like Ernie's, that's something that you would love to do or achieve or discover. So feel free to share with me any of your dreams. I would love to hear them. And maybe if you send them in, I'll be able to share them next week if you want me to. Some dreams we like to keep close in our hearts. Okay, his papa was the great-great-grandson of a traveling family of snails. One day, many years ago, they passed through the village telling stories of a paradise garden. With passion, they told the villagers about this amazing place. They encouraged them to come back with them and start a new and better life in the garden. But not a single snail in the village believed their story. In fact, they just laughed at them. The visitors tried to return to the garden, but the river had dried up, and that was the only way to get there. Forced to stay, they built their lives there in the village, ignored and ridiculed by everyone. Ernie's family was no different to the rest, and although the legend still remained, it was forbidden in his family to talk about it because of the shame it would bring on them from the rest of the village. However, Papa chose to believe the legend. Long ago, when he was a young snail, he had tried to escape to find it. But his family found out, and they were so angry with him, they made him promise to never do it again. So Manuel stayed in the village, but he enjoyed telling his favorite grandson, Ernie, all the stories that had been passed on to him by his ancestors and which he still treasured in his heart. Ernie was one of a large family of snails, the Gonzales. They were well known for the vegetable paella his mama made. So I'm just wondering if anyone knows what a paella is or has tried a paella. I know you can't tell me, but have a think about it. So I will tell you. It is a traditional Spanish dish made with rice and seafood and I think some spices. It's really yummy. So he loves his mum's traditional paella. Snails from all over the village would sit outside his house waiting for a plateful of this delicious Spanish dish. He had 5 sisters and 5 brothers. Wow, that is a lot. I wonder if any of you have 5 sisters and 5 brothers. And Ernie was slap bang in the middle. How many snails are there in total? Life in his family was chaotic, loud, and eventful. I can imagine. There was always a drama of some kind going on. If it was not his eldest brother, Paolo, getting in trouble for spending the whole night leaf surfing down the hill, then it was the whole family having to go and rescue his youngest sister, who had been caught in a piece of chewing gum on her way home from school. Oh my gosh, that does not sound nice for a snail. The family home was next to a plant pot. The family home was a plant pot next to the road, on the main road, running through Vinuela. That was the name of the village. It was dark and dusty, and they lived with the constant smell of fumes from passing cars and the fear of being stepped upon. None of his family, apart from Papa, had ever seen green grass. Can you imagine? Or even trees, or even eaten fresh food. And they lived on vegetable peelings that fell from the kitchen window of the house above them. In short, life was gloomy. And ever since his eldest sister had been found squashed, oh dear, on the pavement, life at home had become even more miserable. Let's have a look where Ernie lives. You see? Ernie had spent his childhood dreaming of Olive Garden and planning his adventure to get there. Patiently, he waited for the time to come for him to leave and to start his brave journey. Then, one day, his papa told him excitedly that the river had finally started flowing again. So that evening, during dinner, he climbed up onto the table and courageously announced to his family that he was going to lead them there, promising them a better life with lots of land, space, and fresh food, and there would be no chance of anyone ever being stepped on again. There was a moment of silence before his brothers burst out laughing, and the rest of the family told him to get off the table and to never mention that stupid idea again. Poor Ernie. From then on, he just stayed quietly in his room as the chaos continued around him. No one ever seemed to take any notice of him, and life at home became busier and gloomier. Ernie just couldn't stand being there. He dreamed of peace and quiet and somewhere he could call his own. He didn't think he would be missed if he left, as he was the only one who ever seemed to take any notice of him was his papa. So he decided to leave and make a new life for himself in the Olive Garden. No one had ever dared to believe his papa's amazing stories except for him. And now the time had come for him to prove them wrong and to follow his grandfather's dream. Excited and ready to let his journey unfold, Ernie hoisted the heavy rucksack onto his back with his long tentacles, grabbed some cabbage leaves, and quietly slipped out of the house, shutting the door behind him. Let's have a look at Ernie's rucksack. There you go. Okay, can you imagine a snail wearing a rucksack? Must be a very small rucksack. Okay, so thank you for listening. So I have another author tip for you. So my last tip last time was planning. So when you're writing a story, it's so essential to plan it. Okay, and when you do write it, make sure you stick to the plan, because that plan is your map through the story. Okay, so it keeps you on track and so you don't zigzag. Imagine Ernie going on a journey without a map. So we'll talk about that in the next chapter. So my tip today is keep your stories simple. So I think the best stories are the simple ones. The reason why I say keep it simple is you'll find it easier to write. So if you write a super complicated plot with lots of different things that happen and twists and turns, when you come to write it, it can be really quite tricky to bring that story to the end, and you find yourself getting really bogged down because so much is happening in the story. So my suggestion would be, and this is from experience from writing, keep your plot simple to start with, okay? And then how you can make your story awesome, because we all want to write an awesome story, yeah? So how you want to make your story awesome is by keeping the plot simple, but using brilliant sentences, awesome adjectives. So using a mixture of short sentences, long sentences, character emotion, fronted adverbials. I love fronted adverbials. We'll talk about that in another author tip soon. So use all your story writing tools to bring the story to life and make the story good, but the plot can be simple. So there you go. That's my tip. So I have promised you another activity. So my activity today is I would love you to write a letter as if you were Ernie. So pretend that you were Ernie and write a letter to your family, trying to persuade them to believe in Olive Garden and maybe to come and join you. Okay, so remember in the story it said that they didn't believe him. So Ernie has tried to get them to believe him, but maybe we can just write a letter trying again for them to believe him. So think about what he might say. So he might want to tell them all about the reasons that he loves Olive Garden, why it's such a special place, and why it's so important to them, and to try and encourage them to believe in his idea. So I'm sure you must have done something like this at school. And I would love to read your work. So you can ask your mom or dad or the person who looks after you to send your story. So if you go onto my website, bethshepard.com, and you'll find my email there, and you can email me your stories. And maybe, just like Amaya's, I'll read them out in the next book reading. So you also find on my website some resources. So if you want to do some more activities, you'll find them on there, and links to my books. But I would love to hear from you and hear what you've been doing and what you've been writing. And don't forget to share with me your dreams if that's what you also want to share. So thank you so much for today, and can't wait to see your work, and stay safe. Bye.